Welcome to the ins and outs of formative assessment. This presentation will give you a brief summary of the research I have done so far on formative assessment. The two questions that I focus my research on are what does effective formative assessment look like and what are effective formative assessment strategies. The reason I chose these questions is because I am lacking in the formative assessment department in my classroom. I am floundering, not really knowing what to do, how to do it, and how to use it effectively. So I wanted to look into what is effective formative assessment, not just what any assessment, but effective, and what are some strategies that I could easily incorporate into my classroom. Before we begin, we should establish what is formative assessment exactly. Throughout my research, there were many different definitions of formative assessment, but this definition given from the book, What Teachers Really Need to Know About Formative Assessment, to me seemed to summarize it the best. It says, formative assessment encompasses a variety of strategies for revealing students' understanding, allowing teachers to pinpoint and address any impediments to a student's progress. Teachers use formative data to decide how much and what kind of learning, support, and practice a student needs to reach the goal. When formative assessment is employed, before, during, and after instruction, both teachers and students have a measure of progress. So basically, if we pull out the main points of this, number one, formative assessment is a variety. There's a lot of different ways that you assess, and it addresses any needs or any ideas as to the student's progress. It happens before, during, and after instruction, and it's there for both the students and the teacher. Now that we know what the definition is, what exactly does formative assessment look like? The best way to understand what effective formative assessment looks like is this three-stage process given in the book, the Formative Assessment Action Plan. The three steps are feed up, which answers the question, where am I going? Feed back, which answers the question, how am I doing? And feed forward, which answers the question, where am I going next? So the whole point of formative assessment is, first of all, to figure out what the goals are. Number two, figure out how you are meeting those goals. And number three, now that we've met those goals, what can we do to improve for next time? I'd like to take a pause here and talk specifically about feedback. What I found interesting was that feedback is very important to the formative assessment process, but I didn't know exactly what good feedback looked like. I eventually, through some research, found out 5 steps on or guidelines on how to give effective feedback. Step number 1 is to be clear. Make sure that it is in language that the students can understand. Number 2 is to be accurate. Make sure it is specific to the assignment you are working on and that it is true for that student. Number 3 is be precise. Another way to think of that is be specific. Make sure you give strengths and improvements that aren't just vague statements that can be given to any student, but that are specific and can bring students to come up with goals for themselves and for teachers to come up with goals for themselves too. Number 4 is to be selective. Again, do not use vague statements or statements that you use for multiple students. It needs to be purposeful for that student and that it makes sense for what you are trying to have the students or yourself work towards. And number 5, feedback needs to be timely. The longer the time there is between the activity or homework assignment and the feedback, the easier it is to forget what is happening. So it is very important that you want to give the feedback as soon as possible after the task was given. So again, to have effective feedback, those 5 goals are clear, accurate, precise, selective, and timely. And now this is probably the moment most of you are waiting for. What are some formative assessment strategies? These first 3 strategies are the strategies most used in classrooms. The biggest one is observation. This is usually done through anecdotal records or just by walking around the room and making mental notes. Questioning is another big one. This can be done through think, pair, share, multiple choice questions where students vote on the answer, clickers or student response systems, or 3 quick questions that the teacher poses. Another big thing that teachers and students will do is participate in discussion. Again, this can be done through a think, pair, share, large groups, small groups, or even having individual student conferences. Another great strategy is to have students write their answers. This can be done through exit slips as students leave your classroom, journals, 3-2-1, which is a series of questions ranging in difficulty, quick write prompts, and weekly summaries on subjects or topics that you have taught. For your visual learners, graphic organizers are a great assessment strategy. I have listed a few here, such as Venn diagrams, KWL charts, webs and maps, T-charts, memory matrices, and affinity diagrams. There are many more that you can gladly explore. Just type it into Google and you'll find a bunch of resources. A few more strategies are self-assessment, where the students will think about their own personal strengths and improvements they could make, as well as peer assessment, where the peers will talk about their certain strengths and improvements, as well as using things called jigsaw, where students will go around and become experts in a subject and then share with their other classmates, and they end up discussing and talking about things together. Another great thing that is especially great for your kinesthetic learners are games and activities. Some examples are Think Dot, review games like Jeopardy, Raft, which is a role-playing game, or Think Tac-Toe, which gives students choices on how to act out what they know. This last topic I'm going to spend a little more time on because it intrigued me when I was researching. The last strategy you can use is homework, quizzes, and tests. The reason this is interesting to be used as formative assessment is because it normally is considered summative assessment. My idea of assessment before was that it had to be either formative or summative, but that is not the case. You can use summative assessments in formative ways with a variety of things, and I will explain it this way. Number one, you can use pretest to test prior knowledge on this. Of what students know. Anticipation guides are very similar to this too, just it's more a discussion format than a written down thing. There's something called a 3-color quiz where you use 3 different colors. The first color is for the student to write down what they personally know. Then they get with the group, and with the second color write down what they know as a group. And then as a whole class you go over it and write down in the third color what it would be. Lab reports and other homework can be used as formative assessments when you use it as a way to show improvement for next time instead of just showing what is right or wrong. For example, if you had a homework page on averaging numbers, you could notice that the student knows the process of averaging, knowing that you need to add them all up and then divide how many there are, but they need to work on their basic division facts to get it completely correct. So you can give that feedback to help them for the next time. Other summative assessments you could use, like standardized tests or tests that you create yourself, you can use that to help guide you in your teaching. When you realize that most students did not quite grasp the effects of the Civil War, you can know for next time you need to change your teaching strategy and try that in a different way so that next time hopefully the ideas can get across. Another great way to make summative assessments formative is to have students redo their assignments. This way they're able to show what they learned and show that they can improve their skills by redoing their homework. Again, you can decide if you want to grade this or just have it as a showing that they have improved, but it is another great way to use the summative assessments as formative. I was relieved to hear some of this because I use a lot of summative assessment in my classroom, but not formative assessment. But by being able to use my summative assessment as formative assessments, as long as you tweak a few of the goals and reasoning behind it, I am able to not have to start from scratch when it comes to formative assessment, but I do have a platform that I can begin from. This concludes my presentation on the ins and outs of formative assessment. If you have any more questions or would like more information, the following slides are the references that I have used for this presentation and from what I have looked at so far. Or feel free to contact me. I'd be happy to point you in some directions to some great articles and books that I have found, as well as if you need clarification on what some of these strategies are. I hope you were able to gain some insight into formative assessment and come away with some new ideas to use in your classroom. Thanks again for watching my presentation.